Welcome to our weekly Vibrant Music Teacher Chat. This is your place to hang out if you want to get the latest news and fun resources that are coming out in the music teaching world. If you want to hang out with other music teachers and just chew the fat, as they say, that's a weird expression. And if you want to learn about a special topic each week, as well as learning about marketing from looking at other teachers' websites and reviewing them together, this is the place to be. We do all of that every week here on the YouTube channel, and I'm delighted to be here with you today. If it's your first time joining us, please do say hello in the comments. And if it is your first time joining us, then we haven't met. Hello, I'm Nicola Cadden. I am the blogger behind colourfulkeys.ie, and I also run the Vibrant Music Teachers community, which is a place where you can get the best resources and the most supportive, wonderful community on the internet. So if you're new to me, consider checking that out. Now, today's special topic is a big one. It's everything you need to know to become a great piano teacher. It's audacious. It's obviously impossible. I hope none of you came along today hoping that in this less than an hour of chat that you would find out everything you need to know to become a great piano teacher, including how to read music. We're not starting at the beginning, of course, but we are going to talk about what it means to be a great teacher and what are the kinds of things that go into that, right? So I want to hear from you. We're going to do our news segment first. You've got some time. Let's chew on it. Let's digest it. What does it mean to be a great piano teacher? And what goes into making you so? What do you think? I would love to hear from you in the chat. And while we do that, let's dive into some news and goings on. All right, so my personal update. It's been a couple of weeks since we saw each other, so a little bit going on, although I've mostly been taking it a little bit easier because we had sunshine here in Dublin. And when we have sunshine, basically the country just goes, all right, okay, let's go outside because we don't get enough sunshine. Not to whinge about it, but we basically take the opportunity when we get it and we all go outside. So I've been doing bits of writing and things like that, but mostly on my iPad in the sunshine, and then putting down the iPad and just closing my eyes for a bit and then doing a bit more writing. So that's been most of what I've been doing, but we've been releasing a lot of stuff that was prepared beforehand. So never fear. We just released something epic, the Foundations of Piano Teaching course. And if you're feeling like today's topic is just for you, if you're feeling like, what is it that means I'm a great piano teacher? How do I know when I'm covering all the bases? Then that course is for you. You can find that inside the Vibrant Music Teaching membership. It is called Foundations of Piano Teaching. And right now, if you go to the courses tab, it'll be right at the top because it's our newest and greatest course. Give me a shout in the chat if you're a member and you've started it. I've heard from loads of people who started already, and it's just been really fun to see people's reactions to it. Everything we put out there takes a lot of effort, as I'm sure you realize, and you're always very appreciative of that effort. This took probably one of the largest amounts of effort, right? Of anything we've ever put out there. To give you a sense of that, I actually started making that course earlier than this, start of July last year. So it took just over a year for that to hit your eyeballs. So it was a lot of different stages of processes and of putting it together to make sure it was the most useful for you, that it was comprehensive, that it truly was foundations of piano teaching, everything, all the bases covered, but that it wasn't overwhelming and that you could move through it in a way where you actually learned something, right? It wasn't just like fire hose in my face and then it's over and I feel like I did something, but I didn't learn anything. I wanted it to be really usable, right? So that has been a year in the making. I'm really excited to see people moving through it now inside the membership. And talking of summer projects, I have a current summer project, and I want you to try and guess what it is. Let me see what clues I can give you. I gave out a couple of clues in the member news today. I'd love you guys to guess it. So I'm going to say this. It's not for you. You might use it, but it's actually for parents. It involves trees, and this clue really won't help, but it also involves baking. So parents, trees, baking. Those are your 3 clues for now. Let's see if we can guess what it might be. And if that's too cryptic, I might give out some more clues in a second. But that's been my main project at the moment, and it, without giving anything away, it has been processing with my helper. I'm trying not to give the game away. But it has been that, and then I was working on it today. So that's all your information for now, and then I'll tell you more in a moment. Other than that, though, we have been releasing tons of other stuff, so I'm not going to list everything that's come out since we had our last show, since it's been a few weeks. But it was on the podcast. Our most recent episode was how to teach beginner students last week, and I think that's an interesting one because basically what I wanted to say in that post, and I hope I said articulately enough, is let's stop saying that going into beginner as a beginner teacher and thinking beginner students, they're the easy ones, that's where I'll start, because they're the hardest. So that's what I was trying to get across, and hopefully make an impact on newer teachers and, you know, teachers who've been at this for a while, who've been feeling that way but maybe haven't felt validated in that because people treat it like beginner students are the easy part, but they're not. They're the most fun in many ways, don't get me wrong, they're super rewarding, but that's when you can have the biggest impact or the biggest detrimental impact if you don't treat it right and respect your role in that student's journey. So that podcast was out last week, and then we had a YouTube video which was directed at parents, which was about how to find a great piano teacher, and I would love to see your comments on that, just to let me know, like, what do you agree with, what do you not agree with, because if you add your comments there, parents are going to see that when they search for, and that video comes up and they're watching it, and they'll see the discourse going on. So if you have a nuance to add, if you disagree with some part of it, do it respectfully, please. I get enough trolling. We don't need that. And I know none of you would do that. But, you know, add into the comments. Actually, I wouldn't, I'm, you know, an experienced teacher and I wouldn't agree with that part. However, this part makes sense to me. These would be some more good questions to ask. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to have them on that video. Lydia, so glad to hear that you liked it. Yes, it's a great way to think about how you advertise as well. And to also give parents some slack when they come to you with questions like, oh, how much is it? And that's their only question. It's because they don't have more questions to ask. And that's what I'm trying to put out there in that video. It's like helping parents have more to say, more to investigate with teachers, because we don't have industry standards and vetting and things. And they have very little, especially if they don't have a musical background, they have very little way to know what to ask you. So they ask about prices because they don't know what else to ask you about. That's what, you know, that's just something to say, I think, in a lot of cases. And then teachers say, oh, I only care about the fees. It's not always true. Sometimes it's true. It's not always true. So hopefully that's helpful for the world. Not to be too grand about it. And I wanted to let you know that we have another challenge coming up. So we just ran our Piano Pedagogy Paint Box Challenge. And if you participated in that, give me a little shout out in the comments. It was such a great challenge. Honestly, the participation was just blew me away. I couldn't believe how engaged you guys were with that content and with each other and with sharing ideas, and it was awesome. We're running a completely different challenge on the 9th of August is when it starts. So 5 days, 9th of August. And it is going to be called Empowering Independent Learners. So what this is about is, okay, so we have a student and they're working with us, and in the beginning we're, you know, helping them with all the little bits and pieces. But what does it take to bring them, and how can we bring them from us babysitting them the whole way through, hand holding every step, to they're able to learn music on their own. Because if we don't get them to there, they're not going to be able to continue making music, or they're going to be discouraged from it later in life. So it's about moving students in that direction, and I hope we can get some wonderful buzzing community going again. I know it's shortly after the last challenge, but the topic is different, and we wanted to do 2 during the summer because it is a time when, if teachers are not on their actual vacation time, they might have fewer students and have a bit more time to really invest in their own professional development, learn things, investigate things. So that's what that's all about. And our next chat I want to let you know is August 2nd, so next week, and that is about reading fluency, and we're going to have a guest, Grace Lee. If you're not familiar with Grace, she makes these awesome apps, and she's going to give us her perspective on, landmarks relating to intervals and how we pace that. Really interesting, I think, for that show. So that's next week. Now, who can guess my secret project? I don't think I've given you enough clues, have I? I think there was one guess. I like this guess, Charlotte, based on my clues. An outdoor parent meeting. I love that. It's not that. I was being slightly more cryptic. Well, not more cryptic, but I was going a different direction with the trees thing. Okay. So I'm going to tell you. If no one can guess, I don't think I can give any other clues that won't give the game away. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what it is. It is going to be a book that is for piano parents. The trees part was just the pages of a book. I couldn't think of a better way to hint at a book that wouldn't be obvious. And the baking part is about the title of the book, or the theme of the book. It is called Practice Pie. So Practice Pie, and it is very much not out there yet. This is in the early stages, but I'm hoping to get it out next month because I want it to be ready for a new year of parents, fresh start, thinking about getting practice properly up and running again in September, and I want to help them with that. The reason I decided to put it together, there are a few books out there for parents of music students, and there are some great ones out there. This is a slightly different perspective because it's focusing more on the building of the routine and, just taking some things from a different angle. And it's always useful to have a couple of different resources to refer to. It's called Practice Pie because the whole thing is like an extended analogy about baking a pie. Not to give too much away, but it's not for you guys, so I don't think I'm ruining any fun surprises. And I wanted that kind of fun element of baking a pie because, let's face it, I can tell you to read a really dense teaching book and you might do it, right? But 40,000 words, 60,000 words, you're going to be like, okay, yep, that's important. I'll stick at it. I'll study. I'll take notes. Music practice is just one tiny element in a parent's enormous schedule and amount of responsibilities. So I wanted this to be super accessible, easy to read, fun, and short. And so that's what it is. It's got this pie theme. It's only going to be about 10,000 words. It's a very little book. I'll give you a reference point. Going to be smaller than that. Okay? So it's going to be like a little handbook, but it's packed full of information. It's going to be small enough that you can't, that's the minimum size where you can write on the spine. So that gives you an indication. It's going to be a book that can't have writing on its spine. So that it's really just, they pick it up, hopefully they can read it, good reader could read it, I'd say, in an hour. It's not a big investment. And they can read it again and again and really digest it. And I hope you can loan it out to your parents, or you can get them to get a copy. You can have it in your waiting room, if you have one in your studio, and hopefully it'll make a difference. I'm going to work my absolute hardest to get it out by September. That's my goal. So I'll keep you posted on that. And with that being said, let's get into our main topic of today, shall we, guys? Let's talk about what it means to become a great teacher. Alrighty, so I want to talk first about prerequisites. Very official sounding word. All I mean by that, of course, is what do you need before you start teaching? What do you think we need before we start teaching? Some people are going to say a degree. And when I thought about putting this topic together, I almost thought about skipping this prerequisite part because it can be a bit of a sticky issue, right? Do you have to have a degree in music to teach? And some people want to say yes to that, or a qualification, let's say. Some people want to say yes to that because they want that baseline so that there aren't people who are wildly underqualified teaching and causing harm to students' technique, to their skills, to their confidence in their own musical abilities. I'm going to say we don't need a degree to teach. And I'm going to say that because, well, number one, you're going to know maybe that I'm biased. I don't have a degree in music. So I don't think you need one because I don't have one. But that's not the only reason. My degree is actually in fashion, and then I have separate diploma qualifications, private, like as an external student, exams that I've taken in music. That's pretty common here in Ireland, I would say. Some people have a music degree, some don't. Practically no one has a pedagogy degree. That's not really a thing. People tend to have studied music and they went to do it usually thinking they were going to compose or to perform, and then they end up teaching. So I'm coming at it from that perspective, which means that someone with a degree isn't always better than someone without a degree at teaching. So my prerequisite is that they need a certain standard of piano playing, okay? I'm not saying that people who can only play an intermediate piece should be teaching. We need to be able to play, okay? So let me just say that right up front. But I don't think you need a third level qualification in performance specifically. I think you can have other kinds of experience, but if you're a new teacher and or thinking about teaching and you're watching this and you're thinking, yeah, I can play, some intermediate-ish pieces for those in an exam system. I can play at a grade 5 level. I think you need to keep learning first. So I'd say the absolute minimum is that you've passed grade 8 or can play at an equivalent standard in the exam system world. That'll make sense to you. The other thing next thing you need, is a fascination with learning. And this is the thing I see as lacking most often. Most teachers that I've met, that I've had as teachers, are great performers. So that's not the lack that I see the most often. What I do see as a problem is that they don't love not just learning themselves, but understanding learning. And that's what you need to teach. I'm not saying you need to understand everything about learning. I'm saying you need to have a fascination with it. You need to be interested in learning. Many people will say that you need patience, right? Have parents ever said to you, "Oh, you must be so patient"? I never know what to say to that. For a long time I didn't anyway. And I still don't always know how to articulate it well enough in the moment. But what I want to say back to them is, I don't need patience. I have understanding. I don't need patience. I'm in the moment with them. I'm fully invested in the learning. I'm so fascinated by the learning process that I don't feel the need for patience. Patience is when you are restraining yourself somehow, right? So I don't need the patience. I need patience if a student is being snarky. That requires patience to deal with and really careful choice of words back. But I don't need it for the learning part. I don't care how slow they're going because I'm in it with them. And that's what I mean by fascination with learning. I think you also need an inquisitive mind. I think you need to be that lifelong learner, right? And that's different from being interested in learning. It's about your own development. You need to keep asking yourself, why this? Why that? What if? And cultivate that within yourself. And I think you need to be an effective communicator. Now, that is not an innate skill. Nothing is. I mean, gosh, there are innate aptitudes or certain levels that we come with that we're a little bit quicker to learn something or another thing, but I think pretty much all of us can learn to communicate effectively in our own style. But it is something you need to invest yourself in. You need to become an effective communicator, not so you can waffle on at a student, it's so that you can say the exact right word or tweak your sentence really carefully to make it come across the right way to them, to make something click, to make them take your criticism not as an insult to them or a judgment on them, but as feedback and an opportunity to improve. And that takes refining of your communication. So those are the 4 prerequisites as I see it, right? We need a certain level of piano playing before we start teaching. And for me, that would be roughly a grade 8 level, which is like an early advanced level. Fascination with learning, an inquisitive mind, and you need to be an effective communicator or be working on that skill. What would you add to that list? What do you need before you start teaching? Let me know. Let's talk about what we need in our lessons. This list is what makes up a big part of the Foundations of Piano Teaching course, is all of the different things that I think should be included in lessons, because I have found through my years working with teachers that there's usually one of these things missing, and it's either because the teacher hasn't even thought about including it, or they know they should include it, or have thought about it at least, but they find it difficult to teach that, right? Love that, Lydia. To be a great piano teacher, you need to be open to trying new things with your students. Keeps things interesting. Yes, and that would be the inquisitive mind, is the way I framed that. You keep trying new stuff. You keep asking why, or what if this, or what if that. Absolutely. Okay, so let's think about what we need to include in lessons. You try and make your own list. Do it in the chat now while I'm talking. See how fast you can do it. I think we need to include, to some degree, in our lessons. And by the way, I don't mean include all of these things in every single lesson. I mean include them in your students' journey, okay? So, reading. I think we need to teach our students music literacy. Unless there is some specific reason why that's going to be not a fruitful path for them, then they should be taught to read. It's just a fundamental skill, and it's useful, and it allows us to explore new things, even if we don't end up using that as our primary mode of learning music. I think we need to teach by rote, and we need to have that skill in our arsenal. Not so that we can teach students pieces that are meant to be taught by reading by rote because it's too hard for them to read it, so that we can teach by rote intentionally and teach them pattern-based pieces that help them navigate the piano, help them explore new things, especially in those beginning stages. We need to teach them oral skills. This is a big one that gets left out a lot, so let me know if you're leaving it out or if it was left out of your own lessons. Ear training is something that is often crammed in at the last minute, or there's the occasional exercise in a method book and we do that, but we don't do much else. And it's amazing when you step back. Step back with me and look at it. We're leaving out listening from music lessons. When you frame it like that, it sounds like nonsense, but a lot of us are. And I don't just mean interval exercises or salsa singing or any of that. That's all valuable. But a lot of us don't even focus on listening. Like, we don't even get the student to properly listen to themselves playing or to listen to music. And a lot of them are not hearing music, even in the same way you did growing up. So let's say you grew up in a household where there wasn't a ton of classical music around. You still would have heard, 3-4 minute songs. A lot of kids are not hearing that. Honestly, they're not. They're hearing video game music, which is just a loop. That's all it is. It's like 8 bars and it goes around. Not every video game, don't get cross with me, but a lot of it, okay? Or they're hearing it in the background of ads or film music. Again, great, but that's not really listening to music, is it? And songs on Spotify are getting shorter and shorter and shorter because you can make more money by getting more plays of a song versus the same amount of time but fewer people listening to the song because it's 4 minutes. So, with these trends, we need to be cultivating listening in our lessons, as well as those traditional oral skills. And yes, I think lots of singing, and ideally with solfa, but that's just my opinion on that. Whatever way you're doing it, there should be some element of ear training in your lessons. Juliet, so glad you're enjoying the ear elevator course. That's a great one for developing those skills, and that doesn't use solfa. So it doesn't always have to be solfa based, but either way, include something. Even if it's just as a once-off project like the ear elevator, open up that world to your students. Then we have rhythm. Any of your students struggle with rhythm? This is something that needs to be actively taught. We can't just enforce counting aloud. That is not enough for most students. We need more rhythm teaching. We need to build in patterns. We need them to feel it and to do the rhythms, vocalize the rhythms, act out the rhythms with us. Part of how we learn rhythms is not the dissection, it's actually doing them. And that's something I felt like I didn't get, not because of my teachers, probably growing up, but because of my natural inclinations, which is I would. Here's an example for you. You know how, well, I'm sure a lot of your students do it this way. They just read the hands together. They know. So say you have a complicated syncopated rhythm, something like that, in the right hand and straight in the left hand. They just play them in the right order, like right, left, together, whatever. By lining them up, they're just watching whether they line up on the score, right? Your beginners, a lot of them are doing that if it comes to a more complicated rhythm. No matter what, I worked out the maths of every single one of those. I never just went, well, I guess that one's first because it's ahead of that one. I always broke it down into the smallest possible fraction and divided it up and figured out exactly how I could count it. And that's great that I was able to do that. But I never just felt it. I never just felt it. I never just trusted my instinct to play it for a long time. So we need to be vocalizing rhythms, feeling rhythms, acting out rhythms with our students so that they don't get too analytical too soon, in my view. We also need to be teaching technique. Who here had an issue with technique that they ingrained into their body and then had to unlearn? Who has had that experience? It is so tough. And we can't get technique completely perfect in the first instance, but I do believe we should be teaching it actively, and that does not mean just playing scales. Teaching technique means teaching people how to use their bodies to efficiently play their instrument. Not just how to play a C scale, how to play a D scale. That's not technique. I can play a C scale with terrible technique. I promise you, any of us can if we really try, right? And kids can do that all the time. So technical exercises are important, but they're the next thing on my list. Technique is separate to me. We can use many different tools to teach technique, but we have to actually talk about how we're moving our bodies. Theory. Who here does theory workbooks, theory games? A lot of us are a fan of those. Or any other methods of teaching theory. It doesn't mean that we have to always teach the theory first or that we have to drill words, but we do have to, at some point, teach our students the how behind it, the structure behind it, how it's put together, how it was made. And that's what theory is. It's understanding all that stuff. I've got 4 left. I think we also need to include improvisation in all our students' journeys. I believe in improvising with my students at every single lesson. That's how important I see it as being. I know people can be scared to jump into it, and that's a whole other topic that's already in several other videos here on the YouTube channel. But if you're not currently doing any improvisation, I really encourage you to jump on it. Get to it. Just try. Just take the first step, right? This is our mantra right here. Not the confetti, but we'll have that too. J dot, right? J dot. Just do one thing. So if you're scared of improvisation right now, just do one thing. Just try one thing and see if it gets the ball rolling. The next one is ensemble. Playing with others. Do all of you get to include this in your students' lessons? It's hard in some circumstances, and it's one of the reasons why I so love my buddy lessons, which are overlapping lessons where I have students for solo time and then time with the next student, overlapping in the middle, so that we can play more together. Pianists especially don't get enough opportunities to play with others, and this goes back to developing rhythm, right? We can develop so much better rhythm skills so much faster and see the relevance of it straight away if we're playing with other musicians. So what are you doing to develop ensemble skills? And I'd especially love to hear from you, those of you who can only teach solo lessons for whatever reason or choose to do it that way. How do you build ensemble skills into your students' lesson? And have you found a way to do it that isn't just you and them? Because that's great and that's an awesome place to start. And please at least do that if you're not already playing duets with your students. But the thing about us playing duets with them is that we are too kind. At least I am. I will fix it for them. Not everything, and I try to be a bit tough on them, but really if they're slightly off the beat, I'm going to instinctively, I'm going to follow them, I'm going to find it, I'm going to see that they made a mistake and went back and just go back with them. It's so irresistible to me. But if there's another student, when there's two students together, they realize, oh no, no one's going to help me with this. Like, we can work together, we can help each other in that way, but no one is going to fix the situation if I mess up the rhythm. So they really have to get it on the ball. And then I have two things left. Composition is my next one, and that's the only one on this list that I think is semi-optional. I would prefer we all teach at least some composition, but improvisation is more important to me. So I'm going to say to you, if you're not currently composing or improvising in your students' lessons, start with the improv for me, okay? And then you can get to composing later. And then lastly, and almost most essentially, most essentially, I'm going to put this as number one. Are we ready? Let's do a drum roll. I don't have that sound. I should really have a drum roll sound effect, but anyway. Practice. We have to teach students how to practice, not to practice. We don't have to just tell them, practice 5 days a week, 30 minutes a day. Bob's your uncle. No. We have to actually teach them how to practice. Who of you was taught to practice growing up? Were you taught how to practice? Did your teachers practice with you in the lesson? Not just tell you, oh, play this 3 times and then do that 7 times, but actually do it together and show you exactly what you were supposed to do at home, and then encourage you to replicate that at home and do that over and over and over. Who had that experience and who didn't? I believe we should all be teaching practice to our students, teaching actual practice skills. And if you are looking for different practice strategies and stuff, you can check out my book. We can barely see it in the background there, but if you just go to Amazon and look up Practice Physician, like a doctor, it will pop right up. Or my name. My name will do the job just fine, Nicola Cantan. And that's Cantan, like they sing in Spanish. Not that that's where it comes from. That's just an easy way to figure out what it is. I have to spell it. Okay. Let's get to some questions. Those are all my essential elements for lessons, and we'll talk about a few extra things we need to become a great teacher. But I'd love your feedback first. So let's see. Cami, what are my favorite duet songbooks or song. So I like books in general, just as a general comment, I prefer books to single sheets. That's just a trend because I like to have stuff we can work through, especially since I have buddy lessons, so I have students regularly together, right? So we're going to work through a lot of pieces. So I like to have books that go together. Now, if you go to, let me see if I can get you the link, because I have a post exactly about this. And it is about evenly leveled duets, because that is the thing that I find most challenging to find great ones. So I want to help you with that if that's where you're at. I feel like there's a lot of duet books that are teacher plus student, loads of them. And then there's a lot of intermediate advanced duets that are roughly the same level. But there's only a few that I can recommend that I love for evenly leveled, and I do have them put together in a post. So I've just shared the link with you in the comments. If you're watching on the replay, you can go to colourfulkeys.com and search for duets, and it'll pop right up. So here are my favorites to list them out loud, but it's easier to look at them in the post if you want to refer to that later. So we've got contest winners for 2. Those are great. Those are compilations of Alfred composers who wrote duets. There's Grand Duets for Piano by Melody Bober. And then the Famous and Fun series, which is by the awesome Carol Matz. So those would be my top 3 because they have multiple levels and they're just really great, well-written pieces. So hopefully that helps, Cami. Let me see. Oh, you're doing a summer project. Yes, it's a great time to work on ensemble playing. And Juliet is proving really popular with you. That's awesome to hear. I love having students perform together at recitals. I did one. That was my, was it? Yeah. It was my pre-pandemic one. So just before the pandemic in January of 2020, I did what turned out to be my last in-person recital for a while, and everyone played at least one ensemble piece in that concert. It was really fun. They did one ensemble and one creative or improvised or self-composed, some kind of creative element piece. Really good concert. It was so much fun. Okay, awesome. Let's think about the next level of teaching then. So that's really the basis, right? We've got the prerequisites and then we've got what our lessons need. I think if you went into it with those prerequisites and you explore and start to incorporate all of those things into your lessons, there's only one more essential ingredient to get you to a baseline of I think you're a pretty great teacher, and that is a plan. Only one more thing, but it's a massive thing, and I get that. And it is really overwhelming as a new teacher to come up with a plan. And by plan, I don't mean the lesson plan necessarily. That's part of it. And I do think especially all new teachers should plan all of their lessons because you will learn so much from planning and reiterating every time. But what I mean by planning is broader than that. I mean that you have a plan, that you know where a student is going, that you know the stages to get them there, that you have a plan for their reading progress, for their oral training. It doesn't have to be rigid and structured, but it has to have a trajectory. You have to know where they're going. And that is something that does come with a little bit of time, for sure. So don't feel like I have to know right away. But some great starting points for that are analyzing method books and seeing the trajectory they take and where they sequence things, so you can start to see what they're doing, and that can influence your own planning. Looking at repertoire at various different levels and seeing what's involved, what are the skills that would be needed to play this piece. And then lesson planning for every lesson so that you learn from the things that you don't get to or that a student wasn't ready for, and what were they not ready for there, and what could have gone better, or what do they find boring. You learn that by planning and looking back on your plans. If you don't write down the plan in the beginning, then you just look back on the lesson and say, oh, yeah, I'll do that better next time. But when you actually plan it in advance and then hold yourself accountable to that and say, what didn't go so well, and look back at it, each week you will get better so much faster. You'll still improve if you don't do that, but you'll improve so much faster if you do it that way. And then it's about other curricula. So not just method books, but analyze the way I put my courses together, like the piano power booster plans. Why do I put things in that order? Or any other general musicianship curriculum. Why are they sequenced in this way? Why did this come before this? And does it make sense to you the same way it made sense to the author? So let me know what else you think needs to be included in lessons or in a teacher's life and their professional development in order to make them into a great teacher. I believe anyone can, any musician can be a wonderful, fantastic music teacher if they're invested in it. So if you're here watching this, I bet that's you. And if you put in the time, you will get there. And we're here if you need support. Let me know what you think is essential in the comments there, because I'm really curious to hear about it. And while we do that, let's dive in and look at a couple of websites to learn about marketing. So before we look at our 2 websites of the day, let's review what we're looking for here. We want there to be enough text, a clear call to action, meaning they tell us what to do, where to go. Consistency, so just a couple of fonts, couple of colors, not too much stuff going on. We want it to showcase the teacher in question, what makes them special. Hopefully show some real photos of them in their studio, and then have a simple menu structure so that we can find our way around. So let us have a look at the first site. This is Shelley's piano studio. Thank you for putting your site up for us to look at, Shelley. So when we land on the homepage, here's what we see. And I see a lot of great stuff here. So first thing I see is there's a big button. That's often missing. So that's great, Shelley. That is our call to action. Now, I don't love the wording. I love the look of the button, and I love actually what you're calling them to do, which is to sign up. But I would say just sign up. The reason being is I like this to be the end of the sentence, I want to. So if I'm the parent looking at it, I say to myself, I want to sign up now. Makes sense, right? But if I want to sign us up, doesn't make sense. So I like to see it as the end of that sentence. What am I about to do in my own words? Because I feel like I'm taking that action, so it's what I'm doing. That's just a niggle there. I would just tweak that a little bit. Now the photo over here, could we make that bigger, put it in the center, or maybe add a few more photos? I feel like the positioning is a little bit odd there on the side, but everything else looks good in terms of the layout and everything. Simple is best, so I like that. I'm not sure about putting the tuition on the home page. I love that you put the tuition fees on the site because I believe we should always put our fees on our site. I believe that very strongly because I just, as a consumer on the other end of this, I hate it when the fees aren't on a website. It makes me really annoyed. So I'm with you in that camp. I just wouldn't put them on the homepage. I would put them on your studio information page or somewhere like that. And then on the homepage, I would put a lot more of what you have on the lessons page here. It's about why take lessons with you, why they're great, what it's like learning with you, or lessons in general. That's what should be on the homepage in my view. Let's take a look at the studio information. Nice. Yeah, so we got the fees again there. So again, I wouldn't put them on the homepage. This is a different size of font, so I would just pick one and stick to it. But otherwise that page looks good. Let's look at the contact form. Yeah, looks great. Simple. Like it. Just check. Where does this... Oh, yeah. So the button is a mail to link. So that's going to be my last tip to you, Shelley, is I would change that. Instead of it being a mail to link, take them to the contact page. Again, this is a thing that personally irritates me, but I believe I believe a lot of people will be on my side, so I'm just going to mention it, which is if I click on that, it is going to open my Apple Mail program on my computer, which I never use. And so that's just not the most intuitive thing for me, whereas taking me to the contact page is more modern practice. So those are a few tips for you, Shelley. Well done on putting the site together. It's looking great. Next up, we have Gabrielle for our second website today. So very different looking site. Okay, so the photo alignment here I'm not quite sure about. It probably looks better, it looks different on different screen sizes. We can see the main image up the top here, so it's getting cropped weirdly. So I would just look at that, Gabrielle, and the settings you have on that, and whether you can crop it down so that on a larger screen like this one right here, when I have it full screen, that it doesn't end up like that. Some website builders now even have a setting where you can pick the focus point. That's fairly new in WordPress, for example. You can pick that it stays on your eyes, so it will like scroll around that, which is really handy. Anyway, I like Educator, Composer, Performer, and I like this call to action. Ideally, I would put it at the top somewhere, whether it's in the header or something if you want to leave this the way it is, or whether it's a button on top of the image here, just so that I don't have to scroll in order to see Join the Studio. Now, I love the style of this page, and normally I would have told you to get rid of the green against red, but in this case I think it's working, so well done for working with a tricky color palette there. I would change the blue, however, because the blue against the green is okay. That's high enough contrast. Not super high, but it's high enough that most people could read it. Whereas the blue against red is not friendly to colorblind people or to people like me who just get a bit dizzy with their eyes. So I would change that color combination, and I would probably just make all the text black, and that would solve your problem. I love the photos. I think this page has a lot of personality, which is fantastic. And I love that the menu is simple. One thing I might change here is the font. It seems to be the same as this one, so maybe it's not. I feel like I've seen a few too many fonts is my point. This looks like I know the name of that font, but anyway. Anyway, that's a Geo type one. That is a different one. This one is, I think, the same as the menu one, but they're in different ways. So like this is all caps and this is regular or title case. So I would maybe reduce the fonts, especially since that looks different as well to your Geo font here as well. Yeah. So I would just remove some of the fonts. Try to keep it to 2 if you can. But I love that the menu is simple. Let's take a look at the bio. Okay, that contrast is a little bit difficult for me to read. I would just make it blue on the white or even black on the white. Sometimes we can try to do things that look a bit snazzy and they would look snazzier if they had less effort. Does that make sense? I hope that doesn't come across the wrong way. Anyway, again, this text contrast is a little bit troublesome. So just adjust that, maybe make it white in this case, since it's short. And yeah, everything else looks great. Really good job on this, Gabrielle. Just think about the fonts and the colors and refining those a little bit, but in general, I think you've done a great job. So well done. Now, I forgot to mention the question thing. Must be a bit rusty. So if any of you have any questions for our Ask Me Anything section here, I will try and go back through the chat and see if there are any that I've missed, because I forgot to tell you to type question at the start, which I should have done. But anyway, if you have one now, please add it in and write the word question at the start of it so that I don't miss it, but I will take a look back through. Oh, Gabrielle, you're here. Awesome. I hope that was useful and helpful. If you have any questions about the feedback, please let me know. Yeah, that's the thing with images like that. It is so tricky. Like the amount of times I've had something like that where I then, think, oh, that's great. And I've checked it on an iPad and on my giant screen and on a laptop. And then I open it on my phone one day and go, oh, gosh. It's like the text is like somewhere inappropriate or something. Like, no. Anyway, so it is really hard. I do get it, but maybe crop it or something and it'll work out. Nanette, thank you for saying that about the Foundations course. I'm so glad you're enjoying it as a review. I definitely had that in mind when I put it together, that it would be great for a new teacher to get a foundation, but also for anyone to go back through and look at each thing individually, because there are things we need to revisit again and again. Nicola, yes, that's a great way to do it. To have listening at the start of the lessons while they walk in, put something on. Another way people have done this is with their technical warm-up, or like with their technique warm-up. So for example, in my studio, we do a series of stretches at the start of the lesson. You can, once your students get used to those stretches, let's say they're going to, do a few stretches and then sit at the piano and check their bench position or anything like that. Once they get used to the sequence, you can also use that time to listen to some music. So that's another great place to put it. While they're coming in and then they sit down, just make sure that when they finish, you say, oh, what did you think of this or that, or mention something specific in the music, because what we need to train them to do is to really listen to music. So much of it is in the background for us. And if we don't call it to their attention, we're not cultivating that listening skill. We're just putting more background music in, right? Yes, Betty, that is my life mission, is everyone's going to be able to play in 3/4. Oh, such a thing. I never struggled with it because I did dancing. And so I try to get students doing that, as well as VMT members will know, including it in everything. If there's like listening examples, I make sure at least 50% of them are in triple meter. Because I'm just determined that we're going to bring it back into vogue someday. There are a few pop songs that are like waltz style, and I sometimes play them for my students when I find them, if appropriate, of course. And I just, like, they always stand out and students always love them, and I'm like, why are more musicians not doing this? Like, put it in triple meter, you will stand out a mile in a good way. Anyway, that's just my view. I am a 3/4 fan. Oh, that could go on a t-shirt, couldn't it? I am a 3/4 fan. Don't think anyone else would wear that but me though. Let me see. Akila, for the masterclasses, I provide a certificate. Are there certificates? Yes. Once you actually complete a course, you will be able to see where you can download the certificate. It's actually built into our course platform, Akila. So if it's not working for you and you are sure you've completed all the lessons on a course, let me know. But that is basically how it works. You have to have marked them all as completed so that you actually did it and finish all the quizzes and everything. And then you can download the certificate with your name on it. Lydia, do I have any fun ideas for the last lesson with a student when they've decided to stop piano lessons? I want to make it fun. Yeah, so, few things. Number one, get them to play something from the very beginning of their studies if it's been a while. If it's been a year, it's not as much fun, but if it's been a few years, take out their beginning book, especially if you have a copy of it, and play the beginning piece together to celebrate how far they did come, right? They're quitting now. We could call it quitting and giving up, but how about instead we say, oh my god, we learned so much. Well done. So I like to start with something like that. Play some of their favorite pieces, especially if there's teacher duets that go with them. And it can be favorite pieces from the last few months or from whenever. And if they don't have teacher duet parts, maybe you make one up to go along with them, because it's great to play with them. And then some improvisation, again, to show them a few patterns. And I would actually do that as a duet first, and do one that you can easily adapt to them playing solo. Something very simple that will work at their level to play solo and will still sound rich, like something pentatonic if they're a beginner. And make sure they know how to do that so that you can say to them, okay, piano is always there for you. You have a piano at home. If you ever feel stressed out, maybe try sitting down at the piano and just messing around or playing your old pieces or whatever it is, right? So we're trying to encourage them to see it as, I didn't fail at this and give up at this. I got to a certain point and I have these skills and I can use them in these different ways, even just to relieve stress or, take a break from something. That's how I like to see it anyway. Good question, Charlotte. I forgot to say the link, didn't I? It is vibrantmusicteaching.com/empower. EMPOWER. ER. EMPOWER. I try to say R rather than or because saying the letter as or is an Irish thing and I think it confuses people a lot. So EMPOWER. Nice. Okay, I think I got all your questions. Thank you all so much for joining me. It's been a blast as always. I hope you will join me next week when we'll have a guest on the show. And until then, I hope you have a fabulous week. And if any of you are going to be at NCKP, please do come along to our booth and say hi. I would love to see you there. And otherwise, I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.